Okay, how's that? That sounds better. Okay, I'm Christine Dorchak. I'm the president of Grey2K USA Worldwide. We work to pass laws to protect greyhounds, promote the adoption of ex-racers, all with the ultimate goal of ending dog racing wherever it exists. And today I'm going to talk to you about our fight to end dog racing here in West Virginia and all across the world. So what I'll begin with is a brief history of greyhound racing. Then I'll talk about the status of the industry today. Then I'm going to talk about the way that we design our campaigns in a very factual way to press our issue. And really, that is the key takeaway from today. Whatever issue you're working on, make sure you've got the facts, because the facts will speak for themselves. And finally, I will end with a little bit of campaign talk, some stuff that's happened along the way, to encourage you to keep fighting, because you don't always win the first time. And you've got to be able to stand up again and say, oh yeah? Oh, I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to win next time. Just got to keep fighting. So if you can go to the next slide. So beginning with the history of greyhound racing, until the early part of the 20th century, greyhounds were just dogs, like any other dog, until someone invented the mechanical lure. It was Owen Patrick Smith in Emeryville, California. He invented this device that would go around an oval track, and that was the beginning of commercial dog racing, because these were the second fastest animals on earth, but no one before had ever thought of a way to make money on that. Well, here was a way to do it. Take bets on who would win a race, and well, there was a lot of illegal activity going on at the same time, by the way. This is much related to some of the earlier talks we've heard today. There are other crimes happening while the front activity is occurring. So here's a historical book about greyhound racing. If you go to the next slide. These early tracks were literally run by mobsters. They were actually criminal syndicates that started the first dog tracks in the United States. By the late 1920s, there were as many as 65 illegal flapper tracks, as they were called, all across the country. And they were called flapper tracks because they would open, close, reopen, relocate, even during the same season, closed down by law enforcement over and over again. In California, for instance, the district attorney of Los Angeles would go in, raid the facility, and arrest everyone for conspiracy to violate the gambling laws of California. And finally, it was Earl Warren, who became the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, of course. When he was Attorney General of California, he made a campaign of ending dog racing in that state altogether. So when you think of good Chief Justices, think of Earl Warren. This is an early program. What happened is there was this illegal network of racing happening, and then a state decided to get in on the game. It was Florida. In 1931, Florida became the first state to legalize dog racing. And what it legalized specifically was pari-mutuel wagering on dogs. Pari-mutuel refers to the fact that the bettors are betting among themselves. The pot is only as high as they make it. And in exchange for allowing the activity, the state would get a piece of that pot, and that's the pari-mutuel tax. So, if you go to the next slide. The next two states to legalize dog racing were Massachusetts in 1934 and Oregon. Those were the next two. And I'm from Massachusetts, so I take that pretty seriously. We were some of the early states to bring greyhound racing as a legal activity to this country. And in Massachusetts, there were actually two attempts to repeal the authorization for dog racing brought by anti-gambling activists and humane societies. But their efforts failed because it was really hard to make the case that any form of revenue should be set aside. Because remember, this is the Great Depression, and states are looking for new forms of revenue, and along comes dog racing. And states bought into it. And it was really hard to make the argument that there would be social and humane costs that would come with this activity. So fast forward many decades to 2001. My organization was formed, And at that time, there were 49 tracks in 15 states. And here are those facilities. And a lot of people, when we first started out, told us, forget about it. You'll never be able to end dog racing. That's an organized business. You can't fight that. And we said, well, we're going to try. So we did. Next slide, please. Today, there are just 19 tracks in 6 states. Soon to become 5 states. Don't want to jinx myself, but we've got a bill on its way to a governor right now, and we're very hopeful that we're going to soon be able to say 18 tracks in 5 states. So keep your fingers crossed for Arizona, please. So that's the status of the industry today. And I want to explain a little bit about how the industry works, because it is a business, and there's an organization to it. And the more you understand about how it works, the better you're going to be able to fight it if you choose to, along with my organization and all the other humane groups that support this measure. The American Greyhound Track Owners Association is the trade group representing the tracks themselves. Then there's the National Greyhound Association, and that is also a trade group that represents the licensees, the people who work at the tracks, the dog handlers, the people who own the dogs. And then on top of that, there are the state agencies, either the racing commissions or departments that are charged with regulating greyhound racing. And let me be clear, regulation involves protecting the bettors. It is the job of racing commissions to protect the integrity of racing, which means to prevent race fixing. Humane rules tend to be very lacking and very poorly enforced. By way of example, there are no rules about confinement of greyhounds here in West Virginia. Cage sizes are prescribed in inches, not feet. Further, at least 8 serious cases of animal cruelty have been documented here just since 2001, and this involved multiple cases of greyhounds, of kennel workers hitting greyhounds, and in one case, a greyhound that was left to sit in her cage for 4 days with a broken leg. No medical treatment was given. And the result of that, well, the Racing Commission really drilled down on the kennel help, who were just following the orders of the kennel owner, who said to give the dog aspirin. The kennel owner faced no consequences. The 2 kennel help, one of whom was actually trying to help the dog, wanted to bring the dog to the vet, lost his license and was assessed fines. So this is the inequality of the industry. It's so poorly regulated, and the ones who are really responsible for this cruelty are rarely held accountable. So I think we go to the next slide. At the same time as more and more understanding about greyhound cruelty is coming forward, the industry is dying. Right now, okay. This is actually surveillance footage of kennel help hitting greyhounds. And this individual, I actually testified in that case, and he did, in fact, face some fines, thank goodness. But these are few and far between. Okay, the next slide. Okay, here we are, we're caught up now. So even as this cruelty continues, the industry is in incredible decline. Since 1990, we've seen an 82% decline in the amount of money gambled on greyhound racing. In 1990, there was a $3.4 billion handle, meaning pot. That's all the money that was bet. That isn't the money that came to the states. The states get a tiny part of that. Most of the money that is bet on greyhound racing is returned to the bettors. That's how it works. We've seen that number go down to $633 million today. So that's nationwide at every track. So there isn't that much money left in dog racing. And here in West Virginia, looking at just the last 15 years, there's been a 72% decline in the amount of money wagered. So we all know where dog racing is going. We just want it to get there a lot faster, and that's the object of our campaign. So next, what I'd like to do is kind of give you a bird's eye look at the main issues that we focus on. And the reason we focus on these issues is because they are the standards in the industry, and they're very poor standards. And the issues that we bring describe the situation for any greyhound at any racetrack in any state. The two issues we really focus on are the confinement of greyhounds at racetrack kennels and the injuries they suffer when they're let out to race. To that point, here's some images of kennels. Greyhounds are kept in warehouse-style kennels in stacked cages for an average of 22 hours a day. You can see their bedding, it's shredded paper. So no toys, they have very little ability to interact with other dogs. They're let out of those cages 2 to 3 times a day to relieve themselves in barren turnout pens. And then they're put back in their cage.
And they have their muzzles still on.
And in many cases, and we've seen it time and time again, even though there are rules against this in many states, you will see the greyhounds muzzled in their cages, a kind of double caging. It's just a very cruel way to handle dogs. And the reason that is the case is because it's just easier, to pull them out of the cage, to let them go to the bathroom, and throw them back in. The muzzle makes it easier to handle them, and that's why I think the muzzle is kept on longer than it should be. I think I have another kennel shot here. So these are all, they all look very similar, don't they? They're all different states. This is the standard in the industry. This is how a greyhound lives. According to the West Virginia Racing Commission, the cages here measure 34 inches high by 32 inches wide by 44 inches deep. That means a large-sized greyhound cannot even stand up in his cage. According to the industry itself, a large-sized greyhound stands 30 inches at the shoulder, so he can't stand up in his cage. That's of no interest to the industry. They're just trying to keep this business going, putting in the least amount of money that they can, and if the greyhound doesn't fit, too bad. Another problem in terms of the kenneling situation is the food that these dogs are fed. Next slide, please. It is a diet based on raw 4D meat. You can see in this picture, and you can see it in the high stakes report I gave you, it says inedible beef. It's 4D meat. It's rejected meat that the USDA will not allow in the human food chain. So greyhound trainers buy it on the cheap from slaughterhouses. They mix it up with a little bit of rice or pasta, and that's what they feed the dogs. And it's a very sickening diet, rich with salmonella. And these dogs, they're already in a very stressful situation. So feeding them this kind of crap, and there's no other word for it, only makes it worse in terms of their health. So those are pictures of 4D meat from various tracks, and those are pictures not taken by us undercover. These are from Racing Commission inspections, and the kennels passed. Why? Because this is what you feed greyhounds. That's the standard in the industry. As long as greyhound racing continues, there's always going to be this cost-benefit analysis in place. How do I keep the dogs in the run, spending as little as possible, so the profit I get is enough to keep me going? It's a very desperate industry at this time. What's really important, and what I've just alluded to, is what I'm describing is not stuff I've obtained secretly. I've obtained it through public information requests, inspection reports from either county governments or the state racing commissions. And these are pictures of kennels that passed inspection. Imagine what the pictures might be of those that don't. So this is, not a good industry for dogs, and it's one that we're trying to get them out of. So next I'm going to turn to talking about our strategies to take that information that we've obtained, and we use it, we present it to lawmakers, decision makers, and we make the most persuasive case that we can that dog racing should end. And we try to think of it as this way. Each campaign is a trial. We assemble our evidence, we'll make the best argument we can, and then we ask for a decision. And sometimes we win, and sometimes we don't. But when we don't win, we get up and we try again. And whatever issue you're working on, try to keep that in mind, because the animals that you're trying to protect, they don't know the difference between some commission meeting where you lost the vote. They're still waiting for help. So try to remember who you're working for. I'm working for the Greyhound, so I know when I've suffered some losses in campaigns, I felt them really hard, but I didn't let my personal disappointment stop me from continuing, because I knew that they were depending on somebody doing something to help them. And I'm just one person with one small organization, but we're making a difference because we really rely on the industry's own records to make our case. It's not a he said, she said, it's a they said campaign. That gives us a lot of strength. But I didn't learn this the easy way. I'm going to talk to you about our most well-known campaign, and the campaign that a lot of people say was easy. Ending dog racing in Massachusetts, my home state now. Massachusetts, full of liberals, right? Of course they ended dog racing. Oh, forgive me, you know what? I forgot about something. I'm looking at my slide here, and I forgot about the other thing that we focus on. Excuse me. Injuries. Injuries are another standard in the industry. Thousands of greyhounds, according to state records, have been injured since 2008 alone, and we're continuing to accumulate these injuries. And of the injuries that occur, we see most frequently a broken leg, broken necks, we see paralysis, seizures. Dogs are even electrocuted while racing. Also that someone can place a $2 bet on them. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Some of the statistics that we've put together, 700 greyhounds injured and 1,000 prevented from racing due to illness at one West Virginia track in a 2-year period. Can you imagine? 1,000 sick dogs. In Massachusetts, before we ended dog racing, a dog was injured every 3 to 4 days at our 2 tracks. Here's one that really kills me. 1,500 injured at one Texas dog track, with 49 dying over a 2-year period. Greyhound racing means greyhounds die. That's why I'm so determined to end it. And here in West Virginia, well, you guys lead the nation in the number of reported injuries. Over 6,000 reported injuries since 2008 at 2 dog tracks. So you've got a big problem on your hand here. And these are some stills from racing footage showing different dogs going down. And sometimes they die instantly when they break their necks, for instance. But a broken-legged dog doesn't stand much of a chance either, because it costs about $1,000 to rehabilitate a broken-legged greyhound. And that cost-benefit analysis means, well, I own this dog, I'm trying to make money off this dog, he's not going to make money again probably. Why should I take care of him? So the decision comes by the owner, who could be somebody out of state, could be a corporation. These dogs are just numbers to them. Well, should I have that dog killed and replace him, or should I do the really nice thing and unload the dog on an adoption group, and they can absorb all the costs? So that's the cool kind of decision making that this industry is constantly doing. And who's paying the price? Of course, the greyhounds. Okay, next slide for sure. Okay, now we're going to talk about solutions, because there are solutions. And in Massachusetts, we ended dog racing in 2008. I wish I could say it was fast and easy. Gosh, it wasn't. We started with a group of 5 people holding signs outside Wonderland Dog Track. Yeah, there was actually a dog track called Wonderland, and it was owned by an individual whose father was a well-known mobster. The father lost the license to the track for, I think it was race fixing, I'm not sure, I can't recall at this point, but he was no longer allowed on the premises. So he gave the dog track to his son, and that was okay. So Wonderland. It was no wonderland for dogs, I can tell you. And 5 of us used to stand outside with our signs every weekend protesting against racing there. And, well, wasn't too effective. It's all we knew how to do, though. So before this campaign would end, however, there were 5,000 people statewide talking to their friends and neighbors, talking to their fellow office workers, and helping spread the word that greyhound racing was cruel and inhumane and must end. And what empowered those people was facts. We were able to deliver information to show that greyhound racing was cruel and inhumane. But that's at the end of the campaign. When we first started, we really didn't have enough information to go to the ballot, but we just didn't know that. So we learned the hard way that to be successful, a strong campaign requires solid information, knowledge of the political process, and enough money to buy weeks of television time. And what I'm talking about is a ballot initiative campaign, of course. I'm sure you've seen on television all the political ads for the presidential campaign. Well, in certain states, like Massachusetts, citizens can bring an issue to their fellow voters. And when every election we just besieged with all these ads for one issue or another. And Massachusetts is one of 24 states that does have the citizens initiative process, which is wonderful. It's a very hard process to do. But it's a good thing we had it because in the 1990s, there were actually 3 bills brought before our lawmakers asking them to prohibit dog racing. Those bills never even got out of committee. So ironically, it would also take 3 attempts for us on the ballot in order to end dog racing. And it all began in 2000. And it ended in 2008, but a lot happened in those 8 years, including being outspent on television 5-1 in the first campaign, being sued for $10 million, 4 of us, for defamation of character against that Wonderland dog track owner. Thought it would be great to try and make us pay for trying to close down his track. Fortunately, when the court looked at that claim, they realized it was a slap suit. It was a case brought just to interfere with someone's political speech. And as a result, he not only lost, but he had to pay our lawyers' fees, which was real nice. That first campaign, though, as hard as we worked, my dog and I collected 15,000 signatures ourselves. We only have 12 weeks to collect the signatures, so you really have to work fast. We lost 51-49. We almost won, though, and we knew it. We knew we had to keep fighting. And while a lot of people kind of gave up and said, oh, well, good try, I'll go on with my life, 4 of us stood up from that campaign and said, wait a minute. Greyhound racing is not only bad here, it's bad everywhere. We have to launch a campaign and an organization to end dog racing nationwide. So the Grey2K committee of 2000 became Grey2K USA in 2001. Unfortunately, the law required us to wait 6 years to bring our ballot question back to the voters. In those 6 years, we passed various protections for the greyhounds. We also passed into law a requirement that there be transparency in the industry. So the 2 dog tracks had to report on the number of injuries and deaths happening at the track. We took all that information and we created a new campaign in 2006. And our ballot question was called the Dog Protection Act. And what it intended to do was prohibit commercial dog racing, increase penalties for harming service dogs, and strengthen laws against dog fighting. We wanted to, if we were going to have to collect those signatures again, we wanted to help as many dogs as possible. And this time, we were endorsed by the MSPCA and the Humane Society of the United States. So they had their own issues that they'd been trying to work on in the legislature, so we all came together with the Dog Protection Act. Every Humane Society in the state endorsed us. Dozens of lawmakers endorsed us. Everybody knew we were going to win. Citizens groups stood up because they found out about the subsidies that the tracks were getting. Everybody was just coming together, and we all knew how it was going to end until we got sued again. Another dog track owner, the second dog track owner, George Carney of Raynham Park, sued to have our ballot question thrown off the ballot. He argued that the Dog Protection Act, the name, was misleading because greyhounds are not dogs. They're part of a regulated industry. They're commercial units. Everybody knows that. And we were trying to fool the voters. Believe it or not, the court agreed. We got struck off the ballot. That really hurt. that was devastating. But we said, hell no. We're going to win this damn thing. And this time, we didn't get on the ballot, so we don't have to wait 6 years. We're going to go right back on the ballot. So, collected the signatures again. 150,000 signatures in 12 weeks. We did it. We won in 12 of 14 counties in 2008, overwhelmingly for the greyhounds and dog racing. But you see how much effort it took and the losses we had to take along the way. So when we talk about the difficulty of ending dog racing with people in states where dog racing is, we say, yeah, you're right, it is difficult, but we can win, and we will win. We just have to stay the course. So that's really my takeaway message for today. Stay the course because the animals are really, really counting on you. So if you can go to the next slides, I'll just describe them. This was our fact sheet on our ballot question. It was question number 3, and it outlines our main points. And this was called the Greyhound Protection Act. I actually wrote it. I wasn't even a lawyer yet. I had just graduated, and so I had my degree, but I hadn't passed the bar yet. But I had to hurry up because the greyhounds needed help. So I spent the summer writing the Greyhound Protection Act and put off taking the bar. So a non-lawyer wrote this bill, and what do you know, it passed. I lost my...
Oh, again.
Hello.
Okay. Here was our prima facie evidence, you might say. We had passed in 2001 a measure requiring the dog tracks to be transparent. And here's an example. We produced a big long report. We couldn't afford a lot of pictures at the time, but it was just page after page after page of all the dogs that had been injured in Massachusetts while greyhound racing had occurred from the time that the voters failed to pass the initiative to that point. So this was a real game changer for us. Here we are. This is Victory Night, and we got a wonderful story in the Boston Globe and a beautiful cartoon about the greyhounds finally going free. And that was our campaign button. Now I'll go back to the more serious aspect of this and finish up. So Massachusetts was a huge game changer. After that, track owners started contacting us. They wanted to work with us because they could see we weren't going to give up. They also did the calculations. They were losing dollars. We were losing dogs. The solution to the problem was the same thing: end dog racing. And you might say, well, why didn't they just end it then? Well, because dog racing is required. There must be a minimum number of dog races offered at a dog track in order for the owner to keep his license and offer other forms of gambling. He's making money off of the other forms of gambling, and it makes up for the losses on dog racing. But if they have their druthers, they'd rather not have the losses. So here's an example of a pari-mutuel law. This is from Florida, and it shows the live racing mandate that is required for any dog track owner. So what we have come up with is this idea of decoupling, and that means divorcing the live racing requirement from other activities at dog tracks. So we're trying to free the dogs, and the greyhound track owners are thrilled because it frees them of their losses. So they're in it for the money, we're in it for the dogs. And we've used this decoupling strategies to successfully end dog racing in several states, including New Hampshire and Rhode Island. There is no longer dog racing in all of New England. We're very close to ending it in Arizona, as I mentioned. So once Arizona goes, we're going to see that whole part of the country also close off in terms of dog racing. Not good. Our only real opposition has been from Greyhound breeders, because they're the only ones who have a dog in the game, so to speak. Without the dogs, they don't get a piece of the pie. And they want to stay in the run because they make money a little bit off of dog racing in what are called purses. But in many states, they're also subsidized. And that's the problem here in West Virginia. And that's why our decoupling measure has gotten so much support in both chambers, because the Greyhound breeders and the Greyhound industry are paid off in the multi-million dollars every year. And the money that they receive that should be going to the state fund instead goes into their pockets, which they then use to hire lobbyists and others to represent their cause before lawmakers. So lawmakers are constantly hearing the facts about dog racing from advocates like myself, but then they're getting a lot of campaign contributions from the Greyhound breeders. And then they've got the dog track owners who are in the middle saying, well, we'd like to end it too, and here's how we'd like to do it. So we're at a point now in West Virginia and in Florida where both chambers agree that dog racing should end. Decoupling should pass. The disagreement in West Virginia and in Florida is how to do it. So here in West Virginia this past session, the Senate actually approved our measure to end dog racing and repeal $15 million in subsidies going to the industry. Unfortunately, the House looked at it in a slightly different way and had different language. The House didn't like the Senate's language. So what had to happen was the chambers had to come together and negotiate. It didn't happen. So decoupling did not get to the governor's desk here in West Virginia or in Florida. So these two states remain very important to us, and two states that we're really, really focusing on. So what we're looking at right now is, because we don't give up, is that the budget is under negotiation now. And we're not only looking at trying to repeal the $15 million that was in the Senate bill, we're looking at an additional $10 million that goes to something called the Racetrack Modernization Fund. We don't think Greyhound tracks should be modernized. We think they should be closed. So that's what we're doing. We're working the budget process, and we're going to keep working until dog racing ends. So if you haven't taken a button, please join me in solidarity today and wear your button. And we've got wristbands as well. It's really important for everyone here to know that there are so many fights for the animals. And we're going to keep working at a lot of them. We're not going to solve them. We know that, no matter how hard we try. We're probably not going to close all puppy mills. We're probably not going to stop a lot of things that we've been talking about today. We are going to stop Greyhound racing. It's only a matter of time, and I hope you'll join me on that journey. So now I'm going to close with some predictions. I think that commercial Greyhound racing is going to end, not only here, but across the globe. We are now focusing our efforts in Australia and the United Kingdom, two hotbeds for Greyhound racing. We invented Greyhound racing, as I mentioned at the beginning, and other countries followed us. So all the cruelty that's happening there, I consider our fault. So I'm trying to undo it. And one particular track support in both chambers, because the Greyhound breeders and the Greyhound industry are paid off in the multi-million dollars every year. And the money that they receive that should be going to the state fund instead goes into their pockets, which they then use to hire lobbyists and others to represent their cause before lawmakers. So lawmakers are constantly hearing the facts about dog racing from advocates like myself, but then they're getting a lot of campaign contributions from the Greyhound breeders. And then they've got the dog track owners who are in the middle saying, well, we'd like to end it too, and here's how we'd like to do it. So we're at a point now in West Virginia and in Florida where both chambers agree that dog racing should end. Decoupling should pass. The disagreement in West Virginia and in Florida is how to do it. So here in West Virginia this past session, the Senate actually approved our measure to end dog racing and repeal $15 million in subsidies going to the industry. Unfortunately, the House looked at it in a slightly different way and had different language. The House didn't like the Senate's language. So what had to happen was the chambers had to come together and negotiate. It didn't happen. So decoupling did not get to the governor's desk here in West Virginia or in Florida. So these two states remain very important to us, and two states that we're really, really focusing on. So what we're looking at right now is, because we don't give up, is that the budget is under negotiation now. And we're not only looking at trying to repeal the $15 million that was in the Senate bill, we're looking at an additional $10 million that goes to something called the Racetrack Modernization Fund. We don't think Greyhound tracks should be modernized. We think they should be closed. So that's what we're doing. We're working the budget process, and we're going to keep working until dog racing ends. So if you haven't taken a button, please join me in solidarity today to wear your button. And we've got wristbands as well. It's really important for everyone here to know that there are so many fights for the animals. And we're going to keep working at a lot of them. We're not going to solve them. We know that. No matter how hard we try. We're probably not going to close all puppy mills. We're probably not going to stop a lot of the things that we've been talking about today. We are going to stop greyhound racing. It's only a matter of time. And I hope you'll join me on that journey. So now I'm going to close with some predictions. I think that commercial greyhound racing is going to end, not only here, but across the globe. We are now focusing our efforts in Australia and the United Kingdom, two hotbeds for greyhound racing. You know, we invented greyhound racing, as I mentioned at the beginning, and other countries followed us. So all the cruelty that's happening there, I consider our fault. So I'm trying to undo it. And one particular track is of great concern to us. It's the Canadrome. It's the only legal dog track in China. Every dog that goes there dies there. There is no adoption program. No dog is allowed out alive. It is the worst dog track in the world. And we managed to cut off the supply of dogs as of December. All the dogs for years have been coming from Australia. We got all the Australian airlines that were carrying the dogs to agree never to do it again. And we said, okay. We didn't get the president of Macau to prohibit dog racing and close down the track. But here's another way to do it. And we were just trying to do our very best to convince the owner to start releasing the dogs to us. Well, the owner thought differently. The owner has found a new source of dogs, and they're coming from Ireland. So now I'm about to go over to Ireland and deliver a petition with hundreds of thousands of signatures to that government to get the government there to stop the export of greyhounds to the Canadrome. I believe that we're going to be successful, and eventually, hopefully within this calendar year, the Canadrome will close. And that will mean that greyhound racing will be legal in 7 countries. So now we're looking at 8. So we're going to keep working to expose the cruelty of dog racing. We're going to pass laws to protect them along the way. We're going to promote adoption. But really, our goal is very, very simple. We're just trying to make greyhounds dogs again and bring them home. So thank you very much for hearing my presentation today.